You're welcome to today's lesson on Let Me Die Alone by John K. Cagle. Its summary, analysis, themes, and examination tips. I am Rumeso Adeyemo from English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by Iota Virtual Learning Platform. So, in this video, we are going to explore Let Me Die Alone by John K. Cagle as a gripping African drama which explores a number of themes such as power, betrayal, and leadership against the backdrop of colonial Sierra Leone. We're also going to explore the plot, themes, the background to the play, the characters, and also discuss important topics that could be important for your YSSC examination so that you can have a full understanding of the play and consequently excel excellently in your YSSC examination. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and let's begin. First, let's discuss the background and historical context of the play. It is crucial to always understand the background and historical context of any literary text that you might want to study. This is because all of your literary texts, especially the recommended text, are not texts that you read for fun. It is not story that you just explore for the fun of it. Rather, these literary texts are usually recommended to you so that you can be exposed to some issues or some period of time in the society. Just as we all know that literature mirrors the society. So it is not reading for fun. Rather, it is reading for you to know, for you to understand issues in the society or some issues that have happened in the past in a particular period of time. So your literary text could be exposing you to some culture or some politics in some period of time, such as we have in the colonial period. It could also be exposing you to a rich history of probably Africa or Western history. In the case of Let Me Die Alone by John K. Cagle, this text or this play is supposed to expose you to African culture, African politics, especially during the colonial period, and also African history. Do you understand? Understanding this background will make you an informed reader so that you can perfectly grasp the perspectives that the author is trying to convey. So, in this vein, let's explore the historical background of Let Me Die Alone. What happened in history that compelled the author to write this play? So, this play centers around Madame Yoko, a fierce female leader. The role Madame Yoko was a powerful leader who faced both internal and external challenges, especially from colonial forces. This play also emphasizes how the play mirrors the struggle between traditional African leadership and European colonial interference. It also explores important themes such as betrayal, colonial oppression, and power dynamics. In essence, it majorly exposes us to the experience of Africans in the colonial era. So now let's explore the plot summary of this play so that you can have a better understanding of the story and how the events in it unfold. The story is in three acts, so we are going to look at the summary act by act. So let's begin with Act 1 summary. So the play opens in Chief Brian's room as interrupted his wife while she was performing some ritual. So she seek her attention in the bed. As they were trying to have some nice time, this nice time was quickly short lived as they were both interrupted by a guard who came to deliver the message of the colonial governor at the time, Governor Rowe. So the messenger informed Chief Brian that Governor Rowe will be visiting the next day. This information kind of unsettles Chief Brian. For context, Chief Brian is the king or the chief of the Mende Kingdom, which includes Senium, where he settles, Moyamba, and other small territories. Chief Brian feels troubled and his wife tried to console him. However, Chief Brian expressed that he had a premonition, that is, he had a dream and he saw his ancestors in his dream. This makes him feel that he's probably going to die soon. You also need to pay attention to this part because in Africa, in literature, Africa is said to believe in three interconnected words of the ancestors, the living, and the unborn. And Africa believes that there is a connection among these three words. So for Chief Baya to see his ancestor in his dream, he knows that this is not an ordinary dream, but it is a form of premonition for him that something is about to happen. His wife tried to console him, but he wouldn't feel consoled. So his wife, Yoko, reminded him that he had promised to confer the chieftaincy of the kingdom to her. However, Chief Brian felt that the kingdom is in chaos at the time and it needs a man to rule it, not a woman. Madame Yoko, his wife, who is a fierce and ambitious woman, tries to convince her husband that she is capable. So she reveals her intent to rule and reminded her husband about other women who have tried to rule and successfully ruled in the past. Eventually, Governor Rowe came visiting, and there was conflict between Governor Rowe and Chief Baya. Chief Baya was humiliated publicly because he was asked to kneel in public in the presence of those that he was ruling over. This led to a public humiliation for Chief Brian. This is also an element of colonial oppression in this play. Despite Chief Brian being the son of the soil in his own community, a whole chief in his own community, he is still humiliated by a colonial governor. This depicts to us that despite having a chief, the colonial governors still have the upper hand in the Mende kingdom. We are also exposed to Lamboy and Musa. Lamboy is the younger brother to Madame Yoko, and Musa is just a spiritualist in the community. So Lamboy has this ruthless, inordinate crave for power. He also wanted to rule the Mende kingdom, so he wants to conspire against Chief Baya. He approached Musa and bullied him into working with him to conspire against the chief so that he can kill him and he can become the chief of the Mende kingdom. At first, Musa was hesitant, but because he blackmailed him with something that Musa had done in the past by killing somebody for his ritual, so Musa had no other choice than to what? To comply. So Lamboy and Musa poisoned Chief Baya in the absence of Madame Yoko after the governor had left. Before Chief Baya died, he pronounced Madame Yoko the next chief. However, because of Lamboy's ruthless and inordinate crave for power, after the death of the king or the chief, he pronounced himself the new chief. When Yoko arrived, seeing both of them, she became suspicious of what could have happened, and he knew that her husband was never going to pronounce Lamboy the next chief. So she pronounced herself the next chief of the Mende Kingdom. This is quite audacious for an African woman. So this is also something you can note for the feminist theme in this play. Madame Yoko is not just an ordinary woman. She's a fierce woman. She's a daring woman. So now let's look at the analysis of this Act 1. As I've said earlier, reading a play is not just about getting to know the story. You also need to understand the analysis, that is, the background information or perception that the author is trying to portray. So, the first thing we need to understand is the power struggles in this play. We can say that many of the characters in the first act were all trying to get power into their own hands. Lamboy was trying to get the power by all costs, even if it takes him to poison his own elder sister's husband. Yoko, despite being a woman, also wanted to rule. Chingbaya was already the chief, but he's not even happy. He has a lot of challenges in front of him. The colonial governor is also exemplifying power by doing what? Humiliating the chief. We are also exposed to gender dynamics. A typical African community is not a community where a woman is going to rule. However, Madame Yoko has depicted herself as an exceptional woman who dares to do what? To challenge the norm by revealing an intention to rule and eventually declaring herself the new chief of the Mende kingdom after the death or the murder of her husband. We are also exposed to colonial oppression as we see how Governor Rowe treated Chief Gbaya. Despite Chief Gbaya being the chief in his own motherland, he is still humiliated in the presence of his own people. So this is also an element of what colonial oppression in this play. Do you understand? So I would say these are the three major issues that are important in the first act of Let Me Die Alone by John K. Campbell. Now let's move on to the summary of the act two of the play. Let's get to know what happened next after Madame Yoko became the king. So in the Act 2, however, we were introduced to a subplot of the play, which is the plot of Jilo, the wife of warrior Indapi, who is caught in an affair with Lansasa, a servant in Yoko's court. So this is quite different from the story of Madame Yoko, Chief Bayan, Lamboy Musa, and the governor. So the story of Jilo and Indapi is like a subplot in the play. Do you understand? So Jilo was caught in an affair. Before she was caught in an affair, we were exposed to a scene where Undapi came home and he expected that his meal will already be ready. But Jilo had not prepared the food and it caused disagreement between them. In that scene, we're exposed to a patriarchal African society, that is a typical patriarchal African society. You might want to ask that what is a patriarchal society? A patriarchal society is a society where the men have the absolute sovereign of the home. They have the absolute power to rule, to be in control of everything in the home and in the society at large, regardless of whether they deserve it or whether they are discharging their responsibilities or not. In also a typical African patriarchal society, women are usually subjugated and subdued. They are not supposed to have a voice of their own or have a choice to do whatever it is that they needed to do. So, and in this context, Jilo is neglected emotionally and psychologically in the marriage. However, Ndapi cares less about what Jilo thinks. All he cares about is for his own rights to be met. As the plot progresses, Ndapi reported Jilo to Yoko, and Yoko, as the chief, mediated between them. She punished Jilo for committing adultery, although she sympathizes with her plight of being neglected emotionally and psychologically in the marriage. However, she punishes her for committing adultery. So, this is also a sign that Yoko, despite being a woman, she is still a just and tactful ruler. So she deserves being a ruler for real because there is no sin that shows that she didn't rule well. She also expanded the territory by moving the capital from Senium to Moyama. Although this caused some kind of chaos amongst the chief, but she did it anyways. So Yoko consolidates power as well and rules with wisdom. She consolidates power with her people and she also cooperated with the colonial governors. So she didn't have much trouble from the colonial governors, but she has much trouble from her own people because they do not want to be ruled by an ordinary woman, in their own words. Lamboy, who still has the ruthless crave for power, wanted to rule at all costs. So she also tried to connive with the whites or the colonial governors by trying to tell them that a woman is not supposed to rule them. Other disgruntled chiefs who are also not pleased with a common woman being their ruler sided with him. Other chiefs such as Ndapi and Keke joined Lamboy to plot against Yoko. In Act 2 still, we are exposed to how Yoko still yearned for motherhood. She really wanted to have a child and also be a wife. However, she has sacrificed motherhood in order for her to join the Poro court, which is necessary for anyone who is going to be the chief of the Mende kingdom. So this is also one of the sacrifices she had to make in order for her to attain power. Despite yearning for motherhood and also willing to be a real woman, as she has put it, she sacrificed everything just for her to reach her goal or an ambition of becoming the chief of Mende Kingdom. So, in order to console herself, she often dote with Jennifer, who is Jilo's daughter. You remember the Jilo and Indapi story. So they both have a daughter together, who is Jennifer. However, Lamboy, who is still very much ruthless in order to achieve his goal, tried to kidnap Geneva. Eventually, he kidnapped her, murdered her, and mutilated her body in a bid to turn the people against Yoko. So he did it just to frame Yoko for the act so that the people can turn against Yoko. After burying the girl in a shallow grave, he framed Yoko for it. When everybody realized that the girl has been kidnapped, Lamboy spread a rumor that Yoko had used the girl for a spiritual power. So he said that Yoko had buried the girl in a pot somewhere around the community just because Yoko wanted more power for her to rule the Mende kingdom. The community was already furious about having a female leader, at least many of them. So it was easy for them to believe Lamboy, and they all erupt in anger and called Yoko a witch and child killer. The community turned against Yoko finally, and they were angry that how would their leader kill an innocent child in their own community, all because she wanted fame and power. Yoko, on the other hand, who knows that she's not guilty, begin to contemplate the depth and the height of the conspiracy against her. She realized that she has been betrayed by even Undapi, who is supposed to be on her own side. Although Undapi at first, which is Jennifer's father, then believed the rumor. But because Lamboy, who is desperate, swore by a particular shrine in the community, so he believed. So now let's look at the analysis of this Act 2 of the play. What is the author trying to tell us with the incident? First, we are exposed to conspiracy of Lamboy and Musa, which also is the background to a major theme in this play, which is the theme of betrayal. It is also another motive for power struggles because we can see that just in order for Lamboy to get power, he conspired against our own sister. Also, we are exposed to dual pressure. It is not just the pressure from the colonial governors, but Yoko still also needs to face pressure from our own people and even our own brother. We're also exposed to the sacrifice that Yoko had to make in order for her to become a chief in her own community because she's a woman. So she needed to forego motherhood and also being a wife in order for her to rule the kingdom. Do you understand? So if you ask me, I would say these are the three major issues in this Act 2. Now let's move on to the summary of Act 3. What happened next after the rumor had spread about Madame Yoko? So Madame Yoko was desperate and she needed answers. She really wanted to know what caused the death of Jennifer. So she went into the bush of Poro to spiritually investigate Jennifer's murder. This is another daring effort of Madame Yoko in this play because the Poro bush is supposed to be entered by only male. But because Madame Yoko is not just an ordinary woman, she is a fierce woman, an ambitious woman, and a daring woman. However, in the Poro bush, it was revealed to her that Jennifer was killed by Musa and Lamboy. So she felt disappointed that why would Lamboy murdered someone else's daughter, and in anger, he cursed Lamboy and Musa. She said, their nose will rot, cataract will marry their eyeballs, leprosy will devour their fingers. So, this is also one of the quotes that you can note or you can commit to memory to support your argument or your analysis or your explanation if you are writing the YSSE literature examination. Eventually, Jennifer's body was found where Lamboy and Musa had buried her, and the villagers realized that she had not just been murdered, but she had also been what? Mutilated. She has been mutilated, that is, essential part of her body has been cut off. So this kind of made people to believe that Madame Yoko didn't commit the murder. Because what Lamboy spread was that she had buried her in a pot somewhere just to get more power. So it became clear that Madame Yoko is innocent. So Ndabi, Jennifer's father, eventually believes that Yoko is innocent and begs for forgiveness. However, the deed has been done. The rumors has been spread and it has spread wild. Negative information goes faster than a positive one. So it does not seem like Yoko's name is going to get cleared anytime soon. So begging for forgiveness is not really going to have any effect or much effect at this point. Are you following? You would also remember that initially, Ndapi didn't even believe that Yoko killed his daughter initially. However, because Lamboy swore by a particular deity, one of the rituals that they observe in their society, this could also be said to be another abuse of power, abuse of spiritual power, because Lamboy had conspirated, it has already bullied Musa into conspiring with him. So they were able to abuse the spiritual power in their community. So you can also add that to whatever it is that you are trying to write, if you are writing on abuse of power. So the damage was already done on Yoko's personality, and Governor Rowe had heard about the rumor. So Governor Rowe orders Yoko to surrender all conquered territories to the British. That is, the colonial governor is now set to do what? To collect all the territory from the chief. That is, they are now going to be in power. It's no longer going to be an indirect rule. It's going to be, it seems like they are now going to start ruling the people directly, even though they are not the son of the soil, they are colonial rulers. So this seemed to Yoko as the ultimate betrayer of all because she has cooperated with the British over the years. She has tried as much as possible to consolidate power between the British and her own people. So she feels devastated. So Yoko reflects on her sacrifices, her infertility, the fact that she sacrificed motherhood. She reflects on Jennifer's death, Gbaya's murder, and also the British betrayal. So she really questioned her ambitiousness, that is it really worth it? For her to sacrifice all of this and eventually she's also losing the territory. She feels disappointed and devastated that it's not really worth it. All her sacrifices and her ambitiousness is not going to bring about any success. So she resorted to poisoning herself. She asked one of her maid to prepare the poison and she said to drink it, refusing to listen to the plea of her servant. As her servant was trying to stop her from taking the poison, she says, "Let me die alone." So that is where the author got the name of the play, "Let Me Die Alone," because she feels that dying honorably is better. So, do you have any question on the storyline? Because that's the story from the beginning to the end. So, we are going to have the analysis of this Act 3 in the concluding video because I don't want this video to be too long for you. But stay around this channel. You are going to see the concluding part of the analysis of Act 3 of the play, the themes, and also analysis of the characters. Do you understand? So make sure you stay around this channel and make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend about this channel. All what you need for your examination success on literature, English, and every other subject is available on this channel. Again, I am Ramaiso Adeyemo from English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. If you are yet to subscribe, kindly do so now. And if you have subscribed already, make sure you check out other related videos. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next video. Bye.